And so I guess that sort of leads into my next question with respect to the asset levy. You went from what, 2.16 to 1.76.
That's correct.
So if my understanding is correct, so we're now on the last year of the asset levy mitigation plan, if you will. So what happens after that?
Now, this community may not feel that that's sufficient and may wish to, in fact, increase it. But the caution I would say, and there's certainly no problem with that, I think most communities in the Lower Mainland, in fact, have been building up asset levies for some time, and may even, in fact, be devoting a higher percentage of their overall budgets to capital investment. But the cautionary note I would sound is it's sort of like trying to save up to buy a house. At some point, you have to say to yourself, well, we need a large sum of cash, and we're not really going to get that in this very gradual way. This gradual way is sufficient to build up that permanent level of investment, as I mentioned, but it's not going to solve the catch-up problem. But certainly, there's no reason why, if the community wishes to continue to add to the asset levy, that they could not do that.
So if it doesn't solve the catch-up problem, should we then not come up with a different number so that we can solve the catch-up problem? Otherwise, we'll constantly be behind the 8 ball and trying to catch up. Does my logic work, or am I?
I think what I'm trying to say is that you cannot solve the catch-up problem with the asset levy. You need, because it will take you so long to, in fact, build up to that level, that the assets in the meantime
will be gone.
Yeah, so we're looking at a 20-year cycle here.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sofrovich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Gordon, number one, the consideration of Finance Committee on the library $706,000 to be reevaluated in other capital infrastructure projects. What does that mean?
Your Worship, I really probably should let the members of the Finance Committee who brought that forward speak to that, but my understanding of it, if it's helpful, is that, as I mentioned, there are a number of fairly substantial capital projects which have been postponed into 2020 and beyond, including, for instance, the replacement of a tower truck at the fire department, the remediation of the Nelson Canyon Bridge, the seismic upgrade of this municipal hall, and so on. So there are, and then there are other projects. For instance, the community, misspeaking here, the Arts Facility Committee, which is to report shortly, I think will be recommending that additional investment be made in arts facilities. There are a number of projects on the waterfront and in Ambleside Park, two of them we just saw. So there is a list of what I would call major projects, which all of which are needing funding and should be considered. And I think the Finance Committee are aware of this, and perhaps not to put interpretations on what they were saying, but there is a need for the district to maybe take a step back and look at all of these things at one time and try to decide where the priorities are. Because
when you do the asset levy, it really is for maintenance of, let's say, critical situations. Of late, we have them listed, or you listed them last year, and some decommissioning if we need to. So in the throes of that, back to Councillor Wong's position that the money that's already been attained to do the critical side, it's really gone already if we're going to do that, is it not?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Sofrovich, the intention and the way that asset levy is calculated is that it does try to meet the needs each and every year. So every year the intention is that money would be spent. The problem is that for whatever reason there was underinvestment in the assets previously. So again, we're trying to catch up.
Pardon me.
In terms of the $19 million, or actually $25 million that's requested for this year's capital budget, the municipality requires a level of investment every year in order to keep the assets going. I mean, that's simply the way it is. There's almost $1 billion worth of assets out there. So, you know, it's not, this is a pretty minimal investment in that level of assets to keep them going.
Well, let me ask you then, on the basis of a continuous asset levy assessment increase every year, I didn't see the projections here, but somewhere in the 20s, it's going to even out a bit, is it not? We're going to catch up, and we will then be able to hit all the critical needs of the buildings and other things that we should be looking at?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Soprovich, that is certainly the goal. That is the goal. But it depends on whether some of these critical catch-up investments can be made. And right now, the district actually, as a corporation, does not have a great deal of financial resources set aside.
Got it.
So some, you know, ideas about how to manage this catching up will have to be considered.
So,
back to these catch-up strategies, Ms. Gordon, can you elaborate a little more on what those might be, or what the realm of catch-up strategies for the asset levy funding might be?
Well, a great deal depends on what it is that council and the community want to move forward with and how quickly they want to move forward with it. However, there are estimates out there of between $50 and $100 million for various levels of asset replacement, including the emergent vision for the Civic Center and so on, which is a long-term plan. Also, I think some consideration will have to be given to whether the district wishes to borrow funds or whether they wish to look at other major sources of revenue.